Welcome back to the AM show. Now, you know that on Thursdays, we bring you AM exclusive. Today, Benjamin Akapo sits with Professor Raymond Atuguba, the Dean of School of Law of the University of Ghana, Legon. It was an interaction on legal education in Ghana, the judiciary, the dispensation of justice, governance, the recent shooting incident in Tema, Dumso, and many more. You want to stay for that conversation. Folks, enjoy the conversation.
Thank you for joining us for another installment of AM Exclusive with me, Benjamin Akapo. And today I have a very famous guest, at least from my end. He's a man who has done a lot by way of the law and its application in Ghana. Without further ado, I want to give you the Dean, School of Law, University of Ghana, Professor Raymond Atuguba, who joins me for a conversation. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Ben, for having me.
It's really good to have you. And you know I'm going to bombard you with legal stuff, but I just wanted to find out, for the rest of us mere mortals, we've been facing Dumso. Practically every area has got its fair share. Yesterday, my light went off twice, but it came back on, to be fair to ECG. Have you experienced same, or are you living in a different Ghana?
I experienced the same thing.
You do?
Actually, this morning I ran late because we had Dumso, where I stay. And unfortunately for us, the solar panels we use have also gone for servicing. So it's not the entire house that is on solar now.
I see.
And so when the lights went off, the water pump couldn't work, so which meant I had to get a bucket of water to wash down. And I had to figure out how to get my stuff ironed, and it made me late.
How did you manage? How did you get your stuff?
Oh, I managed. I grew up in the village, so I have all the tricks to survive.
Tricks, among others,
to survive living without electricity. Yes.
I see. Yes. I see. Interesting tidbits. But let's go straight into legal education in Ghana, and then and now. You know, people would often juxtapose then how it was straight in, and then you get into law school versus what it is now. Has enough changed to make it progressive in Ghana?
The simple answer to your question is that not enough has changed. There is some change, but there's still some way to go.
Okay.
Before 1958, all the lawyers practicing in Ghana were trained outside of Ghana. It was in 1958 that two things happened. The law department of the Faculty of Social Studies of the University of Ghana was established. Incidentally, yes, exactly. So it was a department, a law department of the Faculty of Social Studies in the University of Ghana. This is this university. At the same time, the Ghana School of Law was also established. And the purpose of the two institutions was to train lawyers domestically.
Okay.
So from that time, we started producing lawyers domestically. The reason why I say enough hasn't changed is that when these institutions were established, our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, had a very clear vision for law and for lawyers. That vision had competition from the visions of law as it was operationalized in the United Kingdom and in the United States and other places. But his vision was different. When the first batch of lawyers were graduating from the Ghana School of Law, President Nkrumah attended that ceremony. And on the 4th of January 1962, he gave a speech articulating his vision for law and for lawyers, and therefore for legal education. Let me give you some aspects of that vision, which as yet we are yet to accomplish. He said that he wanted to produce lawyers who were humble, honest.
Why are you smiling like this as you go on this humble, honest?
Of integrity and loyalty,
Okay.
and selfless.
Okay.
He wanted lawyers who would avoid, quote, the pursuit of wealth and influence. He wanted lawyers who were people-centered. Nkrumah wanted lawyers who were focused on the hopes, aspirations, welfare, and progress of the people. And wanted lawyers focused on the dignity, freedom, and unity of the African people. Ben, tell me.
I think I should come back to you on that.
Yes.
Do you think we've missed the mark?
We have missed the mark. We have missed the mark by a huge deviation. Let me tell you a few other things in Nkrumah's vision of law and lawyers. He wanted law that was not too court-centric.
Okay.
In other words, he wanted law to be more preventative than curative. And he wanted law to aid in the growth of the developmental state. In other words, you have a new nation that needs to be developed. Lawyers must use their skills to aid in the construction of the developmental state. Secondly, he had a vision of law that was multidisciplinary. So in that speech on the 4th of January 1962, he said that law does not exist in a vacuum.
Okay.
It exists in a social setting.
Yeah.
And so he wanted lawyers that were talented and multidisciplinary so that they can aid in problem solving backed by critical thinking. And finally, he had a Pan-African vision of law and lawyers. He actually stated in that speech on 4th January that he wanted lawyers who would aid in the construction of Pan-Africanism in the United Africa, based partly on our cultural heritage. Ben, I don't think we've realized this vision yet.
It appears we have a very long way to go.
Yes.
But where exactly do you think the departure started from?
Good.
Where do you think it started?
So when Nkrumah articulated this vision, he also identified the groups of people and individuals that the new Ghanaian lawyers should serve. The departure came when the new Ghanaian lawyers started serving different groups of people, started serving the interests of different groups of people.
Groups like?
Let me name the groups that Nkrumah envisioned. And I'm not making this up. All of these are listed in the speech Dr. Kwame Nkrumah gave on the 4th of January 1958. Sorry, on the 4th of January 1962, when he graduated the first batch of Ghanaian lawyers, fully Ghanaian trained lawyers. He wanted lawyers that would assist African liberation movements, market women, farmers and workers, local government, state corporations, towns and villages with their legal problems. What happened and what created the departure was that lawyers moved to service other agencies and corporations that were not in tandem with this vision of using lawyers to help the developmental states.
But is that not a spin-off of, we've gradually become capitalists?
Yes.
So it is the market forces determine where work is, and where work is, they will go to big corp.
So Ben, it's not a matter of where work is, it's a matter of national orientation.
Okay.
Because it is true that there is work for multinational corporations, but there's also work in our towns and villages. The state and individual lawyers and law firms must make conscious decisions on how they aid these bodies with their legal skills. Are you going to use your legal skills to aid a multinational company, poison the waters, poison the people in the village, and go scot-free? Or are you going to use your legal skills, working on both sides, not just for the villages, but also working within the multinational companies to help these people get social justice?
That's an important point to make, and I see how based on what you've said, we have missed the mark. The question, though, is, do you think we can find our way back?
Oh, definitely.
What will it take?
It's not that difficult. And at this point, I want us to look at our constitutional vision for law and lawyers. Because our constitution also envisions how we should train our young formally in the universities. And that brings me to Article 39 of our constitution. Article 39 of our constitution says that we should integrate appropriate customary values into the fabric of national life through formal and informal education. Now, in the University of Ghana School of Law, we do formal education, formal legal education. What the Constitution requires is for us to integrate into this education appropriate cultural values. Now, that simply means that our education, our legal education, must be domesticated. It must respond to the needs of our society and the people that live in it.
If I asked you how long any administration, it would take any administration, and you see, there's the political end to this, dimension to this, and there is the legal dimension to it. Somehow they've both been interwoven because legal education also has a political tincture. How long do you think it would take to be able to reorient the system and go back to this? Briefly on that point.
It wouldn't take too long. It could take as short as a couple of years. And let me tell you why. From what I'm saying, you might think that we've gotten everything wrong. That's not true. I believe that you and I are sitting right now in the best law school in the entire sub-region. I do not believe that there is any law school in the West African sub-region right now that is as good as the University of Ghana School of Law. Okay. And it means, therefore, that we are one of the best in the rest of Africa and in most of the world. Okay. So it's not lost. The basics for returning to the right path exist.
Are there, right.
In 2021, November, December, we held here in this school a conference on the future of legal education in Ghana and Africa. I don't know if you remember it. The president launched it.
I remember that.
Yes. The Chief Justice, the Speaker of Parliament, the Attorney General.
The Attorney General was here.
Every mover and shaker in the legal profession and the legal education space, together with law faculties in the sub-region, from Gambia, Liberia, Sierra Leone, we're here, Nigeria, we're here. At that meeting, we agreed that certain things about legal education in the legal profession were not going right. We knew this already as individuals, and it was already in the public space, but we affirmed at that conference that there were certain critical things that needed to be done in order to put legal education and legal profession on a better footing. We talked about the unclarity of policy, because our Legal Profession Act still dates back to the early 1960s. We talked about haphazard regulation. Today, it's law school for 1 year. Tomorrow, it's law school for 2 years. The next day, it's law school for another 1 year. We talked about lowering academic standards, which are created by a curriculum that is not fit for purpose, teaching methodologies that do not respond to the needs of our students and the country, modes of assessment that are basically colonial. So many other issues, the cost of legal education, access to legal education, especially moving from the faculties to the law school, resources. We talked about everything, even low salaries for law lecturers was there. After that, we didn't just stop at talking. From here, the University of Ghana School of Law, we spearheaded the resuscitation of the Conference of Law Deans. We've had a number of meetings and working sessions, and in a few weeks, we are meeting to finalize the reform agenda on all of these problems. And then in December, we are holding a meeting of all law teachers in Ghana. And after that, if we are serious about reforming this, that process can start from early next year because we'll be ready to change.
Well, which brings me to my next question, and we may have to accelerate so that we can cover all the bases. But then I'll put two things together. Is our legal education suited for purpose? Is it apt? And the small numbers that keep getting accepted into the Ghana School of Law. And then we keep talking about the much touted gatekeeping and all of that. What do you make of these? Is that education suited for purpose, legal education? And why the purported barriers?
So again, the answer is simple. It's not suited for purpose. And again, I go back to our constitution. Our constitution in Article 25 is very clear on access for legal education, which comes under higher education for our purposes. It's very clear that once you have the capacity, every person must have the opportunity to undertake tertiary education. And that tertiary education should be progressively free. So our constitution is clear. However, beyond the constitution, what is creating the backlog of students waiting to enter the law school derives from a misconception of the number of lawyers in Ghana and their adequacy for our developmental purposes. By the end of 2023, which is just a few months ago, the total number of lawyers, active lawyers in Ghana, was 7,387.
When you say active, they are paid up, they have met all the requirements, they are in good standing.
No, the number of lawyers in good standing is actually less. The number of lawyers who are active...
This is the total, not
yes,
the number in good standing.
This is the total number of lawyers who are active in the sense that they try to interact with the General Legal Council, they try to interact with the Ghana Bar Association, and so forth. So the number of lawyers who are actually practicing is less than this figure of 7,387.
Last I checked, it was around 3,000 something. Is that the figure?
Somewhere there. But for argument's sake, let's still stick with the higher number.
Which is the 7,000?
The 7,000 plus.
Okay.
And then look at the lawyer to population ratio. Because the Magee rule curve, there's a Magee rule curve that determines the appropriate lawyer to population ratio. And it says that 1 lawyer to 250 citizens. Our ratio in Ghana, using the higher number of 7,000 plus, is almost 1 lawyer to 5,000 Ghanaians. So contrary to popular belief, Ghana is completely underlawyered. And then remember that I am looking only at the 35 million Ghanaians. I have not added 31 yes, million. But you still make it 35 because the data from the IMF, the World Bank, and all those,
right?
They're different.
I see where you're going.
I'm just using a higher figure,
right?
So that no one undermines the argument by pointing to. Now, if you take those figures and you add the millions of companies, corporations, NGOs, social groupings that also need legal services, the ratio becomes far worse.
Because they'll crowd out
exactly
the general population.
Exactly. And most of them have higher paying purchasing power. And so they would be the preference for lawyers for the services. So Ghana is completely underlawyered. Don't let anyone deceive you that Ghana has too many lawyers or enough lawyers. Let me come to regional breakdown. More than 75% of the over 7,000 lawyers in Ghana are in the Greater Accra region.
More than 70%.
More than 75%. Yes. More than 75%. More than 3/4
of the 7,000.
Of the 7,000 are in Accra. Which means we have less than 25% of the rest of the active lawyers for the rest of the 15 regions in Ghana.
Why do you think that is?
Because everyone wants to be where the money is, where the big companies are, where they pay more. That's Accra. Even Kumasi, which is supposed to be a commercial town, it has less than 10% of lawyers. 9.2% of lawyers are in the Ashanti region. If you go to the other regions, it's even Western region has 1.8% of lawyers. So think about my region, Upper East and Upper West.
If we give, when I heard there was about one lawyer.
Exactly, that's not surprising.
One for an entire, that's madness.
Yes, it's terrible. So Ghana is completely underlawyed. Now, the reason why we think there are more lawyers than we need in Ghana is because we swayed away from Nkrumah's vision. If you are actually using lawyers in the manner in which Nkrumah envisioned it, you realize that you have far less lawyers in Ghana than you need. In the way he envisioned it, each of the over 200 districts in Ghana would have a legal department in their local government offices, aiding the local government to construct the developmental state. We don't have that.
Which then brings me to the question about the drive by the University of Ghana, the School of Law here, to have that multi-purpose, state-of-the-art facility to also encourage more people to get into the study of law. How is this idea conceived? What impact do you feel this facility, when completed, will actually bring to bear? Not just in Ghana, because in the sub-region, a lot of students also come here.
So, by the way, one of the research units in the new building is going to be focused on legal education and how we can reform legal education, not only in Ghana, but in the sub-region and in Africa. So our school has grown a bit in the last 45 years. We used to have 6 programs. Now we have 41. And I mean 41. From 6 to 41, including master's programs, but also a new PhD program, where we are training people for PhDs who can then teach in various law faculties here. And so our students, naturally, have increased. The number of students has increased from 637 to over 2,000. Most of them are graduate students doing master's programs. And then lecturers too have to increase, because the more students you have, the more lecturers you need. We used to have just about 20 active lecturers. Now, if you add full-time, part-time, and guest lecturers, we have over 150. Not all of them are located here. There are people who come and visit from other universities and teach for a while, then go back, and some continue teaching virtually. And also the staff. We now have about 100 staff working to support the work of the university. Because we do hybrid programs, every program has to have, for example, 1 IT staff. And we have like 19 twin master's programs, so that's already 19 IT staff. Now, all of these have to be housed somewhere. Okay, and that's why we're building this new state-of-the-art complex. We'll be coming to you for a contribution to the building, by the way. Now, I don't like talking about this project just as an infrastructure project, because the project impacts directly on the quality of legal education. And the example I give is this. When I'm teaching, I still teach some topics. I move around the class with a microphone for students to contribute. Now, the time I use doing that takes between a quarter and half of my teaching time. In other words, with a state-of-the-art classroom, where I don't have to move around with the microphone, I can cover twice as much ground as I do now. So we're using twice as much time to teach than we need to use, because our classrooms are not fit for purpose. So we should not keep looking at the infrastructure project as brick and mortar, but as something that would determine the future of legal education in the country. We do not have enough space even to do the call to the bar. We have to go to National Theatre and rent a place. Yeah. Even for graduation this year, we're graduating about 1,000 students. The city conference hall here could hold only 800. And that's why our auditorium and the new space holds 1,730 students. It will be the biggest auditorium in the country, bigger than the International Conference Center when it is done.
I see. How are you raising money to embark on this?
Like I said, I'm coming to you for money. So nowadays, all my friends and all the companies and everybody know that I'm chasing money.
You become a taxpayer.
I've become a notorious money chaser. And of course, we are targeting various segments, including our alumni. And we have pretty decent packages. I mean, for each alumni, we're asking them to contribute $100 a month for 1 year, which is easy on the packet. And of course, we'd put your name on the donors board in perpetuity at the school. There are corporations, there are state agencies, there are foreign donations. All that would put together help us achieve this vision.
How much in total are we looking at?
So our total endowment fund from which the building is going to be constructed is $25 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Well, together we'll put that up. We'll get it done. Mm-hmm. Let's focus a bit on Ghana's fourth Republican Constitution, and there are crucial angles. In the recent past, I've heard you talk about outmoded and outdated English laws that still persist in our legal system, in our constitution, some dating as far back as the 16th century. Mm-hmm. That is 15 something.
Yes.
Why do you feel that is the case, especially when, and in which parts of our constitution, for example, do you see some of this palpably featuring?
So it is the case because after political independence, our first Courts Act in 1960 said that we are going to continue using these British laws in respect of which we don't have local components until the local components are generated. Due to, I would call it pure laziness, we have not constructed the domestic versions of those laws. Mm-hmm. And so in 1993, when the new Courts Act was being passed, we still had to continue to enforce some of these British laws called Statutes of General Application. We just need to sit down and do the hard work, generate local laws, and get rid of these British laws. Then, when I read those British laws, I can't even understand them, and I'm a lawyer. They are written in antiquated English, and yet they constitute the law of Ghana. We simply cannot allow this to continue.
How do we change it? What do we have to do? What do we constitute? I mean, because, and that will take me back to the 2010, Constitutional Review Commission. You would feel that those were some of the things that were meant to, but that is also gathering dust.
Yes. We need to do two things. We need to consult on what the law should be and formulate the laws, and we need to pass them. We have a law reform commission. We need to task them to do this work. We had a Constitution Review Commission. I happened to work on that commission. We produced a 1,000-page report covering constitutional changes, legislative changes, and administrative changes, including changes to these laws that we are talking about. We have 12 substantive chapters in that report stating how the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, the public services, the independent constitutional bodies, decentralization and local government, traditional authority, national security, lands and natural resources, human rights, all these we've shown how they can be reformed, including national development planning. The commission was set up by President Mills. We finished the work and submitted it to him. Some months later after that, he sadly passed. President Mahama took over. He set up an implementation committee. A couple of citizens went to court to stop the implementation. By the time the court case was heard and the Supreme Court said everything was legal, President Mahama was out of office. President Akufo-Addo tried to implement just about 10 of the recommendations, which is far too small. to date.
How many recommendations were there in all? In that 1,000+ page?
Thousands of recommendations, because the recommendations were tailored into 3 categories. The changes that needed to be done to the text of the Constitution, but also the changes that needed to be done to our laws, including these British laws that are still in force. And finally, the administrative actions that need to be taken. It's very easy to change a law. It's just changing the wordings. It's very easy to change the Constitution. It's changing the wording. If you do that and you don't change the administrative practices, you're wasting your time.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where it is, the systems in place.
The systems.
That is where the real devil is. It's in the detail.
It's in the detail.
Do you think there's enough political will to bring this to bear? Because some have also said that, listen, some of the things in there will not favor the political class, the elite, and so they will intentionally. So you see, you talk about the court processes. 2 questions. 1, the courts in themselves, do they help? For example, and this is an outside issue, but the Daniel Domelevo issue and what happened with his age thing. Look at how long it took the courts.
Yes.
By which time damage had been done before they said that, oh, this was not right. And the man said, you know what? I don't even want this anymore. Sign that together with this instance where it took so long. I don't know, but are we doing ourselves any good with such processes?
Let me tell you something I've never discussed publicly. After we finished the work on the Constitution Review Report, I was asked to continue into implementation. I refused.
Why?
Because I had calculated that the report was what Ghana needed for its governance going forward in the next 50 to 100 years. But that because it was so good, the political class and part of the middle class would continuously prevent its implementation. And I didn't want to waste my life on that. And the chair of the commission is there. He can bear me out. He can bear me out because we had this discussion. And when the pressure became too much, I actually left the country and took up a position outside for the tempest and the pressure to cool. And I consciously refused to attend the implementation meetings. I have always believed that the drive for constitutional reform in this country will not come from the political class, will not come from a segment of the middle class. It has to come from the people who are continuously being subjected to a constitution which is now a danger to our governance.
This conversation on this bit, I don't know when it's going to end, because every time I think of it, I feel the former president, Atta Mills, did a very good service to the country by instituting that, yet it's still hanging. And only God knows who will come and see to it that, if not all, at least a good number of them are brought to bear. But let's quickly talk about governance. Recently, there was this poll, and some felt, oh, it's not that credible. It's some poll in the UK with a few people sitting there. But it was in the papers about good governance and Ghana ranking first in West Africa. They were looking at issues like corruption, the rule of law, among others. Nowadays, we throw about the concept of rule of law without sometimes a proper understanding. But in terms of governance, you would also recall what Barack Obama said when he came to Ghana. We don't need strong men, we need strong institutions. How do you think Ghana is faring in that regard, in the fulfillment of this, but not just in fulfilling it, in impacting society?
I mean, general governance in Ghana is falling. The quality of governance is falling, and everybody knows that. You have to be really blind or super biased and prejudiced to say in Ghana today that our general governance is not taking a fall. It's taking a big hit and it's taking a fall, and we're going down. My fear is that unless we do something about it soon, we might get to a point where it breaks. Okay? The 1992 Constitution have always maintained
it's a point where it breaks?
Where it breaks, yeah.
It breaks?
Yes. The 1992
That is
Constitution.
disaster.
Yes. The 1992 Constitution, I've always said, is a good constitution. It's one of the best in the world.
The 1992
Constitution. At the time it was formulated, it was perfectly okay for our needs. It was perfectly okay for our wants. Today,
3 decades on.
Today, the 1992 Constitution is still all right for our needs, but it's not okay for our wants. What the people of Ghana want is real good governance connected also to the economic domain. Ghanaians don't want to wake up to do so and to experience the crisis I had this morning. Ghanaians don't want to go to bed on an empty stomach. Ghanaians don't want to go to the hospital and have to lie in the pathways. Ghanaians don't want their children to be born in Kolebu in corridors or to die in incubators because the lights go off. That's not what we want.
Poor roads.
Poor roads that create accidents and loss of lives. We don't want that. What I'm saying is that unless we reform our laws, including the Constitution, to start addressing our wants, people may lose faith in the Constitution. And from there, then, God knows where we would go.
Speaking of which, the three arms of government, they come together to, form that intertwined entity, three acting as one for the common good. But how do you think we could reinforce these arms of government in Ghana and make them more effective and efficient? Take, for example, the LGBTQ bill and the open tussle between the executive and the legislature, and now the judiciary has been brought into the fray. So all of them, simmering tension, show of power, clerk of parliament presenting the bill. No, you can't present the bill. Go back. For the clerk to now write that, okay, when you are ready, tell me things we've never seen before. How do we get it right on that front?
Ben, the answer to this question you just posed is in the Constitution Review Report. I have always said that all the top 100 governance issues that Ghanaians discuss every day are answered in the Constitution Review Report across time. And let me establish to you how this question you have posed is answered by the Constitution Review Report. The Constitution Review Report examined the implications of Article 108 of the Constitution on financial and non-financial bills, which is at the center of the tussle between the President and the Speaker of Parliament.
Okay.
And the report said that the concept of a money bill must be clarified in the Constitution so that we know the types of private members' bills which are not money bills, which can be processed through Parliament, and those that cannot, except if they come from the President or a minister on his behalf.
So all of this could have been avoided.
All of this could have been avoided if you just simply
private members' bills that have a toll on the consolidated fund.
But as Ghanaians, we love to talk and to keep raising the same issues all the time. It's maybe cathartic, I don't know. The issues are clear, the answers are there, we refuse to implement them, and then we say they are issues. And we are happy to keep them as issues. Because for some reason, it aids our everyday life through all the problems that we encounter.
Getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
I see. In dealing with some of these issues, you would go back to the judiciary, the courts. And indeed, that matter is before the courts. But the Chief Justice in recent times came up with the leading justice, engagement, and it's a bit of a novelty having a chief justice, come and basically lay out a roadmap. This is what she wants to achieve. She spoke about things about making the judiciary itself more accountable. She spoke about the delivery of justice and honesty, integrity, some of what you've mentioned. She spoke about, of course, the logistics needed, because among the three arms of government, it is more like you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You approve my budget, I approve yours. We do this and that. What would be your, I don't need you to go into too much of what she said, but what would be your reaction to, first of all, the symbolism of doing that, and secondly, some of what she laid to bear and the practicality of saying?
So the first thing I'll say is that it's a very good initiative. And I remember me as dean, some of our faculty, and some of our students went for the launch of the Leading Justice Initiative, because we wanted also the students to start getting a sense of some of the professions they would be entering into when they leave here. It's a very good initiative. I think it has to be done. I would perhaps add two things. One is the crisis of legitimacy of the judiciary.
Okay.
If you talk to people around the country, and if you look at the Afrobarometer surveys, including on Ghana, there's a significant reduction in the trust dividend of the judiciary.
True.
That needs to be worked on very seriously. Because if you have a people who do not trust the judiciary as much as they should, it means that they are less likely to take issues to the judiciary for resolution and are more likely to seek to resolve them outside of the judiciary and outside of the formal justice system, and sometimes in nefarious ways.
Right.
So that would be an addition to the Leading Justice initiative. The second addition I recommend,
and I think she spoke about the trust deficit.
Yes.
As far as the judiciary is concerned, and how to, because obviously, if you see that person delivering justice as not a paragon of virtue, all human beings are, liable to some evils here and there, but you see that person to be above the board and reaching out for what is in the interest of everybody and sticking to what is real, then people would feel that I have a fair chance when I go there.
Exactly. So she needs to continue, but with a vision to arrive at a point where every judge who takes a decision would ask themselves, would this decision breed confidence in the people of Ghana for the judiciary?
Wow.
It is critical.
Every time there's a delivery of a judgment or something, the justice must be thinking of that.
Yes.
We need to get to that point.
We need to get to that point, and very quickly.
But in terms of even the justice delivery system across the country, how many regions have high courts and all of that, and the proximity of courts? But then again, it goes back to the availability of lawyers and all of that. She's spoken about that as well.
Exactly.
Some points to devolve the system, but without the lawyers, how does that work out?
And that's the second thing I wanted to commend her for. Her decision to get justice closer to the people. I think she's already started opening up some courts. Some Court of Appeal divisions that were previously shut down are being currently opened. That needs to be increased to cover lower courts so that justice is at the doorsteps of the ordinary people. And like you said, if we do that, we then also have to reconsider our mistaken view about an over-lawyered Ghana. The fact is we are under-lawyered. We need to get more people into the law school and out as lawyers so that they can populate these justice delivery mechanisms and so that they can help, as Nkrumah said, the farmers, the market women, and the workers right there in the communities.
But let me bring back, I remember when Sophia Kufu was Chief Justice, there's always been that talk about quality and that you don't want to water down the quality. Is it that these people who are not making it in there lack the quality, or that maybe they are dangerous people? You know how in the medical sphere, for example, if you have someone who is a quack doctor, it's you're putting your life into dangerous hands.
Absolutely not true. There are students here who do not make it into the Ghana School of Law. They go to the Gambia, for example. They qualify as the top law students in the Gambia. They come back here and do the post-call exam, and they are called to the Ghana Bar. The same person who you think is not good enough to become a Ghanaian lawyer goes to another country, doesn't only qualify, becomes top-notch. And if your argument is that that legal system is smaller and less difficult, that argument is defeated because they then come back to Ghana, do your post-call exam, according to your Ghanaian standards, pass, and are called to the bar. It's not an issue of the quality of the students. If you have issues with the way in which you examine students, you can never determine which students are good or which students are not good. And Ghana has an issue with the way in which we examine students.
Where you are taking 2 essay-type questions, which could come from anywhere. You are studying 6 subject areas. I mean, it's like literally, academically, looking for a needle in a haystack.
Our modes of examination need to be changed. And the Conference of Law Deans have already done a paper on that. We're going to table it at the Conference of Law Teachers in December. If it is accepted, it can then be implemented in all of the faculties across Ghana, so that our system of examining is actually able to determine who is fit to be a good lawyer and who is not. When I finished studies here in Ghana, I went abroad to study. After the first semester exams, there you have an opportunity to meet the professor over your exam, which is something we should be doing here, by the way, so that you don't repeat the same mistakes that you did in the previous. When I met the professor on one of my exams, I was completely shocked. All the time in Ghana, I thought I was good at writing exams. He told me there that my worst performance was in the writing of exams, and that I am the type of student who does better outside of classroom examinations. But I was completely shocked.
Where was this?
This was in Harvard Law School.
Right.
I was completely shocked because there, the modes of examining would include just not the end of year exam, but reaction papers throughout the semester, class participation. As the class is going on, they are watching who is participating. So my highest score was actually in class participation, because he told me that anytime he was caught in the middle of a lecture on how to move the lecture forward, he would come to me with a question and use it to move the class. So my highest score was in class participation. And I always thought that I was good at writing exams. So Ben, we need to redo our modes of examining students in order to really determine those who qualify to be good lawyers and those who don't. Right now, what we do doesn't achieve that aim. You have very good students who are failing and very bad students who are passing.
And there's also the issue of leakages of some exams, which makes the situation even worse.
I think that's now public knowledge. So
let's talk about, you mentioned the Court of Appeal.
Yes.
In recent times, the president has, put forward some appointments, of course, on recommendation to him, forwarded them. And again, that issue has come up on the back of some of the names and faces that have come up. Oh, stacking the courts. What is the reality from where you sit? And do we need to have a cap, for example, on the numbers? Supreme Court, for example. What's your take?
So my first reaction is that despite all the complaints, the quality of legal education in Ghana is still one of the best in the world. We are complaining because Ghana doesn't deserve even what we have. Our standards should be the best in the world, if you're thinking of Nkrumahs Vision. That doesn't mean that we do not produce good lawyers. And so I can say without a shadow of a doubt that all of those nominated qualify for that nomination because those same people are being sought after by other countries, Botswana, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Gambia, ECOWAS Court. They are being sought after because their quality is what? Good. But let me go back to the Ghana that we want. In the Ghana that we want, to attain the status of even a high court judge, not to talk of a court of appeal judge or a Supreme Court judge, the standard must be near excellent. And there are many of the nominees who are not near excellent.
Is that where the problem is?
That's where the problem is.
Is it a political problem?
It could be a political problem because there's some analysis on the political leanings of the appointments. I have done that analysis myself some time ago and had a lot of flack for it. I'm still continuing that work, and it is getting worse over time.
Rulings of
it's getting worse over
which
time.
Party?
I'm looking for the day when I'm leaving the country, and then I'll release it and then take off with my entire family. So ordinarily, these people are good because the world needs them, other African countries need them, so they must be good. But for Ghana, we are looking at people of the caliber of the from Benjamins, the Apollos, the Archers, the Taylors, and so forth.
The standard bearers.
Yes.
Before we wind down, if we want to keep talking about the courts and our justicial system, will never end. There's an interesting happening, though, in recent times, because it also borders on the law and civilian, relationships with the services. That incident, the Plejo Festival in Tema, and what happened, the Navy, and now two people. As of yesterday, I had an interaction with a sister of one of the deceased, whose sister had also taken a photograph of, a small hole in her brother's chest, and a whole long story. But that whole interaction, from Ejisu to Ashaiman to other places, where do you think we're getting it wrong? Is it the orientation? Is it the caliber of people? And the people are seeking justice on this matter.
So Ben, let me take you back to your very first question to me about the character of our laws. Because this issue is cast in the shadow of our laws. When the 1992 Constitution was enforced, when it came into force on 7th January 1993, it immediately cut down the prerogatives of the security forces. Because now all of their actions had to be measured against constitutional standards, which didn't exist during the era of military rule and before the Constitution. What didn't happen, however, was that the laws and the administrative practices didn't fully change to conform with the new constitutional dispensation. And some of them have since changed because we made a lot of noise about this in the early years when the Constitution came into force. But some of them still persist. And let me give you one example. As late as, I believe, 2018, or maybe even after, the standing orders of the police force, which are the orders which show how...
Now a police service.
Ghana Police Service. Which show how police officers should act in operations, contain Standing Order 97. Standing Order 97 says that when there's a demonstration, warn them, an illegal demonstration or gathering, warn them to disperse. If they do not disperse, fire warning shots. If they still do not disperse, fire into the crowd. And by the way, when you are firing into the crowd, Standing Order 97 said, aim for their kneecaps. Ben, this was law in Ghana until we made a lot of noise and they changed it just a few years ago. Think about all the other horrible laws and rules that are still contained in the police standing orders, the police squad notes, and all the administrative instructions that are issued to the police, and which they must go by when they are interacting with us, the citizens, else they'll be summoned before a disciplinary board. In other words, if you're a police officer, prior to 2018, and there was a crowd like that, and you didn't, you fired the warning shot, and they were still advancing, you didn't fire into the crowd, or you fired at their tibia and not the kneecap, you can be disciplined for it. We need a lot of work on our laws, beginning from the Constitution right down to our administrative instructions. And I have told you that this is contained in the Constitution Review Report, where we have articulated how the laws on the police and the laws on the military should be revised to accord with constitutional principles. But we've put the report nicely on the desks, and we keep asking the same questions and raising the same issues. Ben, what's wrong with us?
My final bit to you, if we want to go here, will not end, but you're well-traveled. You've seen a lot in other parts of the world. Ghana is 67 years. Is this the Ghana you would have wanted to see? And what would you change about Ghana today if you had the chance to do so? That would be my final bit to you.
So, what I would want changed...
Is this the Ghana you would have wanted to see?
This is not the Ghana.
Years old.
This is not the Ghana I would have wanted to see. 67 years down the line. Ghana still has the same issues that it had when I was a child. Of course, there have been some improvements, but not enough. Given the human talent Ghana has, given the natural resources Ghana has, we should not be here today. And what I want for Ghana is contained in our Constitution. Article 36, 2F. The most secure democracy is one that assures the basic necessities of life as a fundamental duty. The most secure democracy is one that assures the basic necessities of life, not as charity, but as a fundamental duty of government. Thank you.
You're making me think about economic rights. But where some will tell you that, look, I deserve employment. It's my economic right. But we are so grateful that you've taken the time to join us, Professor Raymond Atuguba. And hopefully someday that work, over 1,000 pages, will be implemented over time, and we all can be better for it. Thank you so much.
We pray. Thank you.
And this has been my interaction on AM Exclusive with Professor Raymond Atuguba, Dean of the School of Law at the University of Ghana. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully in history, posterity, there'll be something to reflect on some of how we can actually make things better, legally, governance-wise, and more. Thank you for watching.